I'm Alon Tal. I'm the chair of the Department of Public Policy at Tel Aviv University. I'm also very active in a number of environmental organizations. I chair 3 Israeli environmental NGOs, and most recently I've been a candidate for Israel's parliament in Knesset under the Blue and White Party. Globally, there has been a slow but steady decrease in the overall fertility levels, and this is very good news. And that means that we're now seeing a little more than 1% growth every year in the world's population. The trouble is there's a lot of people out there already. So 1% of 7.7 billion means basically we have 80 million people a year. Let's think about what that means. If you snap your finger once every second, after something like 11 days, you'll get to 1 million snaps, okay? Now multiply that by 80. That gives you a sense of just how much time we're talking about, how many numbers are added every year. Each one of these people comes with their own carbon footprint, their own aspirations, completely legitimate, but it presents a burden on the Earth's ecosystem services that is becoming unbearable. What we've learned in a variety of research cross-culturally is the decision to have children is a very personal decision and generally isn't driven by macro policy considerations. It can be informed by economic interests. It can be informed largely by religious or cultural beliefs, perceptions. It can be perceived by one's pressure within a family or societal norms. And so when we think about trying to move, I think, societies from high growth to more stable situations, replacement fertility levels, you have to be able to address those drivers which are informing people's decisions. It's not enough, and it's very critical prerequisite to make sure that contraception is available, because that helps a lot. But if people aren't motivated to use it, then they're not going to. And we see in some countries with some of the highest birth rates in the world, largely Muslim countries, by the way, Mali has 7 children per family, for example, that the desired family size is even higher, 9 or 10 children. And that's what we really have to start addressing, to show people that their lives will be better and they will be healthier and happier as a couple if they have fewer children. I think absolutely it informs so much of your expectations. I know that when I got married, I grew up in a family of 4 children. It was my expectation to have at least 4 because that's what I was used to. So for sure, those create the norms. But one of the things that I've argued about in this conference, and I was very grateful for the opportunity to raise these kind of issues, is that there's no environmental challenge which is more dependent on the position taken by the faith communities, by religious leaders, and that a lot of people have large families because they believe that that's what God wants from them. And my belief, if we look at least at the Abrahamic traditions, is that the tradition does not expect people to have very large families. Say the Jewish religion, we expect people to have 2 children as a minimum, but certainly there's no expectation that they have large families, and in times of famine or ecological crisis, they would be actually expected to have none. So also, I don't find any place in Islam which preaches to have large family. And although Catholicism has a sort of takes a jaundiced view of contraception and abortion, indeed you see Christian countries, birth rates are the lowest in the world. So I believe that religion should be a force for stability and sustainability, and religious leaders should realize that without getting their hands dirty and dealing with the somewhat sensitive and charged issue of overpopulation, we're not going to make the kind of progress we must make on this planet environmentally. One of the things I'm very interested in and doing research on at Tel Aviv University is what we call positive sustainability, taking some of the insights from positive psychology and applying it to a range of environmental problems. The fundamental notion would be that over the years, environmental messaging has been extremely doomsday and gloomy and ineffective. So when you tell people the sky is falling and the earth is going to start boiling and the species are collapsing, it creates a paralysis. You have to give people a sense of hope. And recently we wrote a fairly major article on this issue, a colleague of mine and me myself, trying to make the case that we should develop a communication strategy for sustainable population, which really looks at the positive elements. And with enough examples of that, if you look at some of the successful family planning programs throughout Africa and Asia, where really that people were told, if you want a good life, if you want to be happier, then you should have fewer children. And in research supports that. Couples with 2 children happen to have better marriages across societies than those who have 6 or 7. And children raised in those kind of families have better opportunities, seem to be better adjusted. Even single children tend to be better adjusted than those who come from large families, against all conventional wisdom. So these are the kind of positive messages we have to make. Do something good for yourself, not just for the planet. What I found to be compelling is when we have a common objective. Environment has provided that. So as the chairman and director of NGOs, I've filed litigation with Arab NGOs largely made up of Muslim members. And at that point, we realized that from a values perspective and what we wanted for our children, there was no difference at all. We don't want our kids to get sick if they drink the water or breathe the air. We all love nature, would like to see our children enjoy the same kinds of ecosystems and natural wonders that we have. And I think those kind of values offer an opportunity. We've heard here at the conference, really, speaker after speaker address the same concerns and provide me, at least, with a strong, optimistic sense that if we just sit down and the environmentalists work together, we can certainly set up a shared agenda within this Middle Eastern region, which can bring people together. Politicians somehow don't always make the environmental issues their most paramount concerns. But I believe that part of our role as academics, civil society, those people participating, is to remind them that that's really what matters to people more. And some of the more vague and theoretical divisions are less important than the fact that we all can have a healthy environment and live well.
Yeah. So it sounds like a huge aspect of that is even just starting the conversation and trying to connect.
I must say that after a series of conversation, one after another, where I had an opportunity to meet colleagues from Arab countries who I'd never had the chance to meet because of political constraints, I'm just feeling extremely hopeful about the future. When I meet somebody from the Arab world who's working in coral reef preservation and is as passionate and committed and informed about this really critical challenge ecologically as any Israeli peer that I know. And when I see people, even a high level of people that are here, and UN representatives coming from Arab countries, whose, I would say it's almost synonymous, the kind of perspective I bring to this and the way they do, it does give one a sense that, yes, we need to come together and share our concerns and think about common strategies for our region. I leave here back to Israel, which is in the midst of a election campaign. In September 7th, we go to the polls yet again to see if we can't pick a new government. And the party which I'm involved in is a relatively new party, but it's an opposition party, and we expect to unseat the present government. And one of the issues which I would like to raise myself in campaigning is the willingness, the openness of the Arab world to embrace an Israeli presence, something that I found here from all the speakers, if we would just be more moderate in certain issues. And I don't want to flesh those out at present, but I think that that kind of openness to the Arab world is something that Israelis need to hear, because we can get a siege mentality after so many years of being very defensive, having tremendous security concerns legitimate. But when you hear a new openness and willingness to accept Israel, as I've heard at this gathering, I think it's a message we have to pass on. And I'm also happy to say that already, as a basis of certain conversations, expect to be invited to several professional conferences in the Arab world that would never have been accessible, from my perspective, without having to come here and meet them. And all of a sudden, they realize maybe I can make a contribution there. So I think there's a lot of good things to come out of this gathering, and the ripples will be felt for some time. So clearly there is a maximum number of inhabitants. One of the things I try to argue, we don't want to get to a maximum carrying capacity. Who wants to live in a factory farm? We stuff more and more and more people. So it's not just a question of can we survive? Of course we could find ways to survive, and we could grow food maybe in laboratories, and we could live, but the quality of life would go down. So it's not just what I would say the maximum carrying capacity we need to be talking about. What is the optimal carrying capacity? At what point does life on this planet or in a given country become worse because of additional people? These are issues which were raised in the late 1960s and 70s, but for a variety of reasons were taken off the table of the international environmental discourse. And I think that's highly unfortunate. I think today the population pressures are such, the massive ecological damage, the loss of 60% of all animals in the wild in the last 45 years, and 1 million species facing extinction, the climate crisis, which comes up time and time again, which is directly a function of the number of people on the planet and, of course, their consumption patterns. Those are things which can't wait. And so we have to put these issues honestly and openly, and as this conference is doing, turn to our religious leaders and say, you need to weigh in on this issue. You have something to say, and you have an influence.